but it does ask intriguing questions about whether the past can be changed. The heroine Sarah Connor's catchphrase is, "There is no fate but what we make." So I hope you understand the basics of block universe theory despite its lack of success in film. Bonus problem, the Bilking paradox. What if Harry decided not to save himself and see what would happen? Would his past self be killed by the Dementors and his present self wink out of existence? This is known as the Bilking paradox, right? He made a contract that this was something he was going to do, and it happened in history, but then what if he changed his mind? So, this is what it's called when someone deliberately tries to create a paradox by swindling time itself. But really it's the same kind of problem as the grandfather paradox and autumn infanticide, trying to undo something that you know has happened. Now, Harry Potter lives in a block universe, and so he doesn't have the choice of deciding not to do what he is fated to do. But presumably in timelines theory, one would have the option of bilking. What would happen if someone caused a paradox like this? The results of a time paradox could cause a chain reaction that would unravel the very fabric of the space-time continuum and destroy the entire universe. Granted, that's a worst-case scenario. The destruction might in fact be very localized, limited to merely our own galaxy. The destruction of the universe is actually a pretty common theory. It might have been first suggested by John Varley, and it's known as his cosmic disgust theory. And he expresses it in the form of a petulant note to the offending time traveler. If you're going to play games like that, I'll take my marbles and go home. Signed, God. So, let's talk about problems with these two theories. What's wrong with the block universe? In block universe theory, if you travel to the past with the intent of autumn infanticide, you would be somehow thwarted, because obviously, since you exist, you did not succeed. But why didn't you succeed? The answer to why can't you change the past is usually, since we do not now see the results of your efforts, you must have failed. Why did you fail? You just did. It's not always a good answer. William J. Devlin explains that to eliminate one's own existence appears to be impossible given the causal continuity between the time traveler and the person who is killed. But at the same time, the actions of murder and accidental killing are physically possible. We thus have a dilemma. On the one hand, if we maintain that it is logically possible for time travelers to directly or indirectly terminate their younger selves, then we must account for why they physically cannot do it. Paul J. Nahan, a strong advocate of block universe theory, writes, "This particular problem of the unchangeability of past events is directly related to the question of free will versus fatalism. That is, are humans the creators of the future, or are they mere fated puppets of destiny?" The block universe theory avoids all kinds of causality problems because the traveler does not have the freedom to change the past. Some kind of fate constrains the traveler's actions. However, this feels like a cheat. Without agency, without free will, how can people's decisions be meaningful? Whether or not you value fatalism and predestination is a question of philosophy. But since most movies believe you make your own fate and the future is what you make it, the block universe is an unpopular theory. So what's wrong with timeline theory? Besides obvious problems like bilking, there's another big problem. In the movies, it almost invariably involves personal temporal dissociation. That's my own term because I haven't seen a standard phrase for this. That is, the traveler becomes personally disconnected from his or her world's history. When the past is overwritten, why aren't Marty's memories overwritten? Our Marty is not the Marty who grew up in a wealthy, happy home. Who did? And where is he now? What about time travel protects the traveler from changing? And what happens to the person who lived the changed life? So I have an example of extreme dissociation, déjà vu. In this 2006 crime thriller, Agent Doug Carlin uses a government computer program called Snow White to travel back in time 4 days to solve a bombing and save a woman he falls in love with. In the process of saving Claire, future Doug drives the bomb into the river and dies. As Claire mourns, past Doug approaches her, and they drive off into the proverbial sunset. Now we know that this can't be block universe theory, because because Doug is able to change the past, even though the movie dabbles with block universe ideas and is inconsistent with itself. So we're dealing with timeline theory, which is plagued by the problem of personal temporal dissociation. In this movie, Doug's two selves cannot be one person because his past self will not live to become the future self who dies in the explosion. He was essentially cloned, and one clone died. Now, there's some creative examples. In The Time Shifters, which went by the USA title The Thrill Seekers, 1999, the time travel company exists within a temporal bunker. When changes to the past create vast changes to the present, the people in the bunker remain safe. It's likely that no one here has even heard of The Time Shifters because it was a made-for-TV TBS Superstation movie. But if you love time travel movies, you should watch this, find it on the internet, it's great. It asks some good questions. And in Frequency, in 2000, the protagonist John acquires multiple sets of memories, as if the hero mystically lived both lives. Now that sounds kind of unscientific, but that's okay because this movie used magic and time travel. Both of these movies are complicated, and they occasionally break their own rules, but they're hardly endorsed for ingenuity. At least they tried to explain the problem. Now, besides these creative, unique solutions, how can we make sense of most movies that don't give us a reason for personal temporal dissociation? There's really only one solution to explain why the traveler remains unchanged. Parallel universes. I don't like it either. The traveler is obviously a product of a different world than the one he or she has changed. This becomes the only possible explanation. So, let's look at the movies we've looked at already. Suppose that our Marty is from an unhappy universe, and when he time travels, he jumps into another happier universe. Where is the Marty of this universe? Could it be that he went to a different world too? Is there a domino chain of infinite Martys switching universes? Well, that's just silly. So it makes sense why this theory is denied in the world of the movie. Parallel universes would easily explain the two Dougs in Deja Vu. However, this means that in one universe, Doug has no idea who Claire is or why she thinks he saved her. The Doug who did save her is dead, and in the universe he disappeared from, his coworkers must believe that their sending him back in time killed him. On the one hand, there's a Doug whose love interest falls into his lap with no help from himself. And on the other hand, there's the Doug who did all the work but dies without reward, and will be mourned in his home universe. This is all deeply unsatisfying. So, now that we're coming to the conclusion of my talk, you must be feeling kind of desperate. None of these examples work. The only movie that I think works is 12 Monkeys, and that movie is so complicated that I could never talk about it in 15 minutes. So, why watch time travel movies? If they're inconsistent, if they're hard to understand, if they just plain don't make sense. Can there not exist a time travel movie that makes sense, that works, that is consistent with itself, and is entertaining? Are there no good time travel movies out there at all? That's how I felt. Until this year. Until... So, Star Trek. This movie proved me happily wrong. In my defense, I have never been a Trekkie. I think I saw one episode of the show. But Star Trek is the most impressive movie I've seen this year. True, I've been living under a rock since I started my master's, and I haven't read a book for fun since September, but it's great. Here's what's good about it. This movie actually uses physics. This is our first example of real science. The backward time travel occurs through a black hole, which is the only way physicists presently think backward time travel might work. For once, the time travel actually makes sense without paradoxes, but only if you consider the characters from the future to be from an alternate world. Once again, the movie itself doesn't really lead to this solution, but there would be several causality paradoxes without it. So once again, the characters from the future remember a different world than now exists, a different past than what is coming to pass. They are personally dissociated from history, but it all makes sense if they're from another world. So don't give up. Once in a while, a movie does come along and do it right, once in a very long while. But even though they're fraught with error, time travel movies are entertaining, and more than that, they make us think about questions of logic, causality, fate, and even free will.